football fans? Welcome to another episode of Bad Takes in Football. I am your host, Bad Takes. Excited to get into week 8 of football. Let's let some people get in here. Let's have a good time today. Let's talk about these week 8 matchups. Lamar Jackson returned to practice today. Aaron Rodgers goes up against his former team, the Green Bay Packers. A lot of exciting stuff going on this week. So let's dive into it in a little bit. Again, let's let some people get in here. Let's have a good time. I prompted the chat with a question. Which team is in the most must-win situation right now? Again, I know it's only week 8, but there are some teams that are starting to pull away in their divisions. And so teams like the Chargers, who play on Thursday night, in my opinion, are a team that are in a must-win situation. So we'll dive into more of that. Everyone say hello to Mags. Mags is here. She showed up. So again, we'll dive into that in a little bit. But again, I'm gonna wait a little bit for people to pile in. Actually, gotta update this subscription goal. We're at 73 subscribers now. Let me update this for everyone. This is exciting. All right, boom. Done. There we go. We updated the subscription goal. Again, my goal is to get to 100. I would love to get to 100 in the next couple weeks. We've got a lot of really good momentum going on here on Bad Takes in Football. Again, I really want these live streams to be a place where we can banter about football, talk about your team, my takes, your takes, whatever it might be. I also post videos Monday through Friday talking about what's going on around the NFL, key topics, what happened in some key games, any of those, really any of that. So again, I really want these live streams, which I do every Monday and Wednesday. Right now, I'm doing them either at 6 or 6:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll come up with a more standardized time. Most likely, it'll probably be 6:30 on Mondays and then 6 on Wednesdays. But again, we'll dive more into that later on. But again, let's let some more people pile in, and we'll go ahead and get started with today's show. Okay, so let's kick things off. So again, first things I want to talk about this Thursday night football game. The Minnesota Vikings are going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. And again, in my opinion, this is a game that the Chargers have to win. When you look at this team, when you look at their record, they are a 4-3 team. This team is a much better team than a 4-3 record. I can tell you that right now. One of the biggest issues that they are facing is the fact that they just don't have a run game right now. Both Najee Harris and Amarian Hampton are out right now. I know that they're still expecting Amarian Hampton to be out for at least the next couple games. And so they're really relying on Vidal, the running back they picked up off the streets 2 weeks ago, to be the guy for them. Again, this is a must-win situation. Right now, they're technically in second place in the AFC West. They are behind the Broncos, who are 5-2, and they're just ahead of the Chiefs, who they beat head-to-head, and that is why they have that tiebreaker. But the Chiefs, in my opinion, are about to go on a run. It's a cookie cutter for the Chiefs. They just do this every single year. They got Rashid Rice back last week, and they used him like the possession receiver they've been missing. And so, again, I think that this Chiefs team is going to get hot. And again, this is a reason why the Chargers are going to need to win this game against the Vikings in order to keep up with the Broncos and also stay ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I was looking at these teams, and there are some interesting aspects to this. And the first one being, is Carson Wentz going to start again for the Minnesota Vikings? It seemed to me that J.J. McCarthy was ready to play last week for Sunday's game, obviously was held out, and they kept Carson Wentz as the starter. Was not necessarily the right decision to make, in my opinion. The Minnesota Vikings struggled with Carson Wentz as their quarterback. And so for me, I'm curious to see what J.J. McCarthy looks like And if he's able to get back on track, with these wide receivers, they have a great wide receiver room with Jordan Addison, especially Justin Jefferson. Really, though, in all honesty, J.J. McCarthy has really only had like one good half of football in the entirety of his career right now in the NFL. And so against this Chargers team, this is a team that is able to put up a lot of points. And so the Vikings are going to have to keep up with that. That is a big aspect of this game is can J.J. McCarthy keep on track with what the Chargers can put up on the scoreboard? Now, there is one thing that is really helping the Minnesota Vikings in this game. It's the fact that they don't have the best run defense, but their pass defense is actually much better. They really excel from a pass defense perspective. And so going up against the Chargers, they actually match up pretty well against that offense. Again, the Chargers, they are a passing team. And so without Amarian Hampton, again, without Najee Harris, who's out for the year, they're relying on the pass very heavily. And so that's the Vikings' strong suit. And so you're really going to see a clash of, which aspect wins out, beats out the other, right? Is the Vikings defense, are they going to prevail over the passing game of the Chargers, right? Justin Herbert put up 420 yards. He had three touchdowns and 2 interceptions in last week's game. So he struggled from an interception perspective a little bit. But again, this is a must-win game for those Chargers. Now, the Vikings, I didn't expect this. I don't think most people did. Tell me if I'm wrong in chat, but the Vikings are 3-3. So this is also a must-win game for them if they want to keep up with teams like the Bears. The Bears are 4-2, and then the Lions are 5-2. The Packers, they're 4-1-1. So you have 3 teams that have positive records, and you're sitting there at 500. And you need to make something happen pretty quickly. I know, again, this is basically the middle of the season, but this is where the playoffs are made. This is how teams make or break it when it comes to the playoffs. Because again, if you lose these games now in October and early November, that is going to make it so much harder for you in December to make up for those situations, for those losses. And so again, this is a must-win game, in my opinion, for both of these teams. Now, what do I actually expect to happen? I think the Chargers are a little bit desperate. This Chargers team, again, they've been struggling recently. They've actually lost 3 of the last 4 games. Right? They lost last week against the Colts, who are a great team. They did beat the Dolphins, but at this point, a dumpster could beat the Dolphins. And they lost the 2 games prior to that to the Commanders and the Giants. So again, this is a must-win game for the Chargers. I think that they're going to come out hungry. I think they're going to come out desperate. And I expect that the Chargers will win this game. I think the score of this game will be 27-21. That's really how I see this game going. Now, we'll go on to the next game. Again, when you get in here, make sure you make sure you subscribe. I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. We've got some awesome momentum over the last week. I've gained about 13 subscribers in the last week. So again, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. We're also doing a giveaway to one of those subscribers. Also, make sure to hit that like button. Let's try to get more people into chat. I want this to be a place where we can banter back and forth. I'll talk about these games all day, but really, for me, I want to interact with my community. I want to have a good time. So if you have an idea, if you have something you want to say, again, put it in chat. Let's have a good time. Let's talk about it. The next game I'm going to talk about, Miami Dolphins are traveling to Atlanta to face the Falcons. Now, this is probably the last matchup that the Miami Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa wanted when playing after the week they had last week. Tua had 3 interceptions. Mike McDaniel made it very obvious that he is not happy with Tua. I don't think any of the Miami Dolphins team is happy with Tua. He has 10 interceptions on the year so far, and they're 1-6. Right? They beat the Jets. That's the one team they've beaten, and the Jets haven't won a single game. So that's really the world that the Dolphins are living in right now. And all signs led to the fact that Mike McDaniel was probably going to try Quinn Ewers at quarterback going into this game. I think he realized that Quinn Ewers is nowhere close to being able to win a game right now in the NFL. I also don't think Tua is right now. I think Tua is a little bit lost. I think the comments he made 2 weeks ago about the leadership issues, honestly, were more so him talking about himself and his lack of confidence, his lack of ability as a leader and as the quarterback in this team. That because again, they are struggling mightily, and they're going up against the Falcons, who have a top five defense right now in the NFL. They're great in the pass, they're great in the run. This is a recipe for disaster for this Miami Dolphins team. I do think that they're going to really heavily rely on Devon Achane in this game because, again, I don't think they can trust Tua. When Mike McDaniel was asked about what they expect going into this week, he basically said Tua's going to get the snaps, he's going to get the time, and hopefully I expect him to not throw 10 picks. That is what Mike McDaniel said about Tua. That is a terrible way to talk about your starting quarterback. That puts zero confidence in how you feel about your star quarterback. And so again, this is a recipe for disaster for this team. This team is crumbling right in front of our eyes. I will say this about the Falcons. The Falcons, they are one of the most inconsistent teams, especially on the offensive side. That is one thing that is going in favor of this Dolphins team. Michael Penix has looked like one of the best second-year quarterbacks in the league in a couple games, but he's also looked like one of the worst in the other games as well. He's been very up and down. It's boom or bust really for Michael Penix when it comes to his performances in games. Bijan Robinson is the savior of this team, and if they want to make sure to secure this win, which in my opinion is a pretty safe bet, just rely heavily on Bijan Robinson. Use him in the pass, use him in the run. Make sure he gives Michael Penix that confidence with some short passes, some easy routes to get Michael Penix in a flow. And Bijan Robinson is great when it comes to yards after the catch. He is amazing when it comes to being in open space and making plays for this team. So again, I think this is a recipe for disaster for this Dolphins team. The Falcons need to win this game to keep up with teams like the Carolina Panthers, who actually have like a winning record right now. Who would have thought of that at the beginning of the season? I know for me, I have my doubts. I still have my doubts in Carolina. That's another conversation though. But again, when it comes to this game, what I actually expect to happen, I think the Falcons win this game, and I think they actually win this game pretty easily. I expect the Falcons to win this game 23 to 13. I think it'll be a 10-point game. I see them putting up 23 points and the Dolphins putting up 13. And it might actually be the last game we see Tua as the starting quarterback for the Dolphins for quite some time. I think they're going to have to give Quinn Ewers a shot because at this point, when you look at this team, it's very obvious to me that Tua is probably not going to be the future of this team. And I don't think Mike McDaniel is either. When I watch Mike McDaniel in his press conferences, it's like a lost emo kid. He seems like a lost emo kid that's on drugs. That's really what he looks like in press conferences because he's like, I expect our quarterback not to throw 10 interceptions. Yeah, like what are you talking about? Anyway, so that's really where I expect this game to go. Next game we're going to talk about. Let's talk about the Jets and the Bengals. First off, this is the perfect game again. Like I talked about that for the Falcons. This is the perfect game for the Bengals to follow up after the win they had against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. Joe Flacco looked like he was in prime form. He was basically using Jamar Chase like a running back. It was just slant route after slant route after slant route, gaining 10 yards after 10 yards after 10 yards, to the point where Jamar Chase had 16 catches for 160 yards, 160 plus yards, and then I think he had one or two touchdowns, right? Like he was essentially a running back for this team when it was just like, hey, we need a first down, we're going to throw the ball. Their run game did work last week. I will say that their run game, it was a breath of fresh air for them, but still, They truly used Jamar Chase like a running back in this game, just like getting all these first downs for them and then just making plays when they needed them. You're going up against the Jets, who, in my opinion, it sounds to me like they are not going to be starting Justin Fields. Justin Fields, we have probably seen the last of him as a starting quarterback in the NFL. He'll probably get a couple chances this year purely because Tyrod Taylor is older and I don't expect Tyrod Taylor to stay healthy for the rest of this year. That's basically the only reason why they'll use Justin Fields. It's going to be out of necessity. And again, the Bengals, they're 3-4 right now. They're actually second right now in the AFC North behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've closed that gap. And again, you're going up against an 0-7 team. You're playing at home. This is a perfect way for them to get some momentum. And I think you're going to start hearing about the fact of, when does Joe Burrow get back? Can he help them get in a playoff run? They're actually setting up for that. A lot of people thought the Bengals season was over, but it's not. If Joe Burrow actually comes back when they think he can, which is going to be mid-December, if Joe Flacco is able to just keep this ship steady and continue to win some games, win the games you should win, you're able to lose some games as well, especially with how bad the AFC North is. Like this, they actually have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. I can't believe I'm saying it, but that's actually the case. Now, when it comes to actually talking about this game, again, you have a 38-year-old quarterback in Tyrod Taylor who is going to be throwing to a receiver room that does not have Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson will be out for this game, and that's going to have a huge impact on this game. I think the Bengals might actually potentially blow out the Jets. The Jets, they're going to have to very heavily rely on Breece Hall in this game. Breece Hall is going to need to have the best game of his career in this game if the Jets want to have a chance, because the Bengals defense isn't good. That's been talked about over and over. I've talked about it ad nauseum too, so I'm not going to dive into that. But again, if Breece Hall can get going, if he can put together some solid drives on the ground, keeping Joe Flacco and that Bengals offense off the field, the Jets actually might have a shot in this game. Again, I don't actually expect that to happen. I think it's going to be a blowout. I actually expect the Bengals to win this game, and I think they're going to win this game 28-10. I really do think it's going to be that much of a blowout, because I think the Bengals are coming in with some confidence. Joe Flacco is just that guy. Joe Cool, man. I know they also called Joe Burrow Joe Cool, but the original, the real OG Joe Cool is Joe Flacco, and I'm buying it. I'm buying into the hype. I think the Bengals will win this game, and I think Joe Flacco is going to have another good game in this game. Next, we're going to talk about the Browns versus the Patriots. But before I do that, again, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button. Let's try to get some more people in here. Let's have a good time. Let's talk some football. Again, I want this to be a place where we can just banter back and forth. Don't be shy. I have terrible takes all the time. I'll be the first to admit that. I have terrible takes all the time. So feel free to come in here, talk about how bad my take is, pick me apart, whatever that might be. Give me your own takes. Again, let's just have some fun in here. But yeah, let's go into this next game. Like I said, the Browns versus the Patriots. Now, the Patriots are actually looking like a top team in the AFC right now. I'm not saying they look like the best team, but they look like one of the top, without a doubt. I mean, there's actually very few top teams in the AFC this year. It's the AFC West. You have, I'm even hesitant to call the Pittsburgh Steelers a top team in the AFC. I personally, I know I'm a Ravens fan. You can call me biased if you want. I don't trust their offense. And their defense sometimes can have lapses, and they're older. And so as you get further into the season, it's going to become harder and harder to rely on people like Cam Hayward, like TJ Watt, right? Like Jalen Ramsey, he's not like a spring chicken anymore. I'm not saying he's old, but you get those dings, you get banged up a little bit. It becomes harder and harder to be the Jalen Ramsey, that people expect. And so I don't necessarily buy into them. I do see the Patriots, though, as one of those top teams. I think Mike Vrabel has put together a really solid roster for the most part, besides their run game. I'm still holding out hope for Travion Henderson. Ramondre Stevenson actually had a pretty decent game last week. But again, Drake May is looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He's looking like the best second-year quarterback right now, right? So I'm talking about comparing him against the Jaden Daniels of the world, against the Caleb Williams of the world, Michael Penix, right? Drake May, he's got over 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions this year. That's amazing numbers for a second-year quarterback. Everyone talks about the sophomore slump. Drake May hasn't had a sophomore year slump. he's been very consistent. He struggled in one game. I can't remember who it was against, but he had like 3 turnovers, 2 of which I believe were fumbles, and then he had an interception. But really, other than that game, why don't I just? No, I'm not going to pull it up. But it was one of the games they lost. But again, 5-2. They are competing right now very handily with the Buffalo Bills. When you look at the actual standings, the Patriots are actually ahead of the Buffalo Bills right now because they're 5-2 and the Bills are 4-2. Right, so the Bills have one less game because of a bye, but the Patriots being first in the AFC East was not something I expected, at least this early. I'm a huge fan of Mike Vrabel. Let me just say that right off the bat. I think Mike Vrabel is a great coach. I thought it was super dumb for the Tennessee Titans to let Vrabel go. I think they thought they needed some like fresh blood, some new blood in there, new energy, and that's why they made the decision they made. Clearly, it didn't work out for them. They just fired their head coach that replaced Mike Vrabel, so it hasn't worked out for them. But again, this Patriots team, what I'm expecting a heavy pass game against this Browns team because again, you can't count on the run game you can't count on the Patriots run game. And on the other side, I'm expecting Quinshon Judkins he's going to have the same type of game he had last week, which was like 3 touchdowns. He's going to have the same sort of performance last week that he had last week this week if the Browns want to have a chance, because right now you're talking about a rookie quarterback in Dylan Gabriel who has really, at least especially the last couple games, has really truly looked like a rookie quarterback. And so for me, you're going to need Quinshon Judkins to kind of carry this team if the Browns want to have any shot. Because right now, Dylan Gabriel, he's got a 59% completion percentage. He's thrown for a little bit less than 550 yards. He's at 546. He has 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. So he's not making a lot of mistakes. But again, he's also not putting a lot of points up on the board. And so you need Quinshon Judkins to be that guy that's going to get into the end zone for this team, because you also do not have, I would say, reliable receivers in Cleveland either. Jerry Jeudy, he's got a little over 250 yards on the season, and we're talking about 7 games right now. Right? They've played 7 games, and he has 257 yards on the season. Like, that's not going to cut it for a wide receiver one. That is not going to win you games. That is not going to get you in a position to be in the playoffs. And I don't think anyone is expecting the Browns to be a playoff team. I'm just saying, like, from a standard perspective, like, that's what you need to happen. And so, again, I think this is a game where Judkins is very heavily used, and I see the Patriots really heavily relying on the pass game against this Browns team. If I were to really come up with a prediction as to how I see this game going, I think the Patriots do win this game. Mike Vrabel's really good at coming up with game plans. Even though they're on a hot streak, I think he's going to keep them humble. I expect the Patriots to win this game 21-14. Let's dive into a little bit of a division rivalry. I'm actually talking about the Giants versus the Eagles. So the Giants are traveling to the Giants are traveling to Philadelphia to face the Eagles, who got back on track in last week's game for the most part. And what I mean by that is you saw a really good performance from Jalen Hurts, from Devontae Smith, and from A.J. Brown. But Saquon Barkley is still struggling. Saquon Barkley in that game, I think he had somewhere around, and let me pull this up real fast just to kind of make sure I'm quoting this right. Saquon Barkley had 44 yards last week. Like, that is nowhere near what is expected or what is needed from Saquon Barkley in big game situations. Now, they were playing against the Minnesota Vikings, who, again, they struggled against the pass, which isn't normally like them. But, again, this is a team, you're playing against the Giants, who know your team well, right? This is a division rivalry. They've got a lot of energy around this Giants team as well. There's a lot of belief in this offense, especially. I'm talking about Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo. They don't have the wide receiver room really to compete with the Eagles. It's going to come down to, if the Giants pass rush can make Jalen Hurts make mistakes, can they make Jalen Hurts uncomfortable, which is really hard to do. Like Jalen Hurts, one, he has a really good offensive line. Two, he's one of the most like cool, calm, collected quarterbacks I've ever seen. The guy just doesn't get overly hyped. He doesn't get pissed off. He just stays so level headed throughout. And so I think this is a type of game where it's going to be really hard for the Eagles to win this. I know they just barely lost to the Broncos. I think the Broncos are probably actually a better team than the Eagles, but this is at home in Philadelphia. I do expect that the Eagles will win this game. I think Jalen Hurts will have a good game in this game. I expect that the Eagles will win 28-17. Got a couple more 1 o'clock Eastern games that we can talk about. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills traveling to the Carolina Panthers. Now, this is a game where if you were to ask me at the beginning of the season if there would be any sort of chance that the Panthers would win this game, I would have told you no. But here's an important factor when it comes to thinking about this Panthers team. They're actually undefeated at home. This game is in Carolina, and they're playing at home. And also, the Bills are struggling. The Bills have lost 2 games in a row. They are kind of in a little bit of like a rut, especially when it comes to their offense. The Falcons made this offense look very pedestrian at best. And again, I know that they're coming off of a bye. That's going to be a huge help for this Bills team. I think, Josh Allen is probably super hungry, especially after those 2 losses in a row. Again, they lost to the Patriots and then they lost to the Falcons. They have the Chiefs coming up, though, after this. And so you have to wonder at the same time, is Josh Allen and the Bills, are they going to be thinking about that game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? Because that is going to be something that might be in the back of their minds. Now, when it comes to the Carolina Panthers, here's the good news for the Carolina Panthers. 1, the Buffalo Bills run defense is one of the worst in the leagues. They give up so many rushing yards. And so Rico Dowdle, with how he was playing, not necessarily last week as much, but the 2 weeks prior, where he was averaging like 180 yards a game, basically. You need him to have that sort of game to have a really good chance against this Buffalo Bills team, because Josh Allen, what he's known for is extending plays and making something out of nothing. And the Panthers defense is not what they're known for. Now, the Panthers defense, they were stout last week. I will tell you that. They actually looked like the reason why the Panthers actually won last week against the Jets. Again, it was against the Jets, so let's say that. The game was 13-6. And so again, this is a game where you're going to need your defense to have a repeat performance as well. You're going to need Rico to play top level. You're going to need your defense to play at top level. But here's the other thing. I actually want to see this team win because of Bryce Young, not despite of him. I live in Charlotte, right? And one of the biggest things that bothers me about this team is the fact that, like, Bryce Young, he's 4-3, but it's never because of him. Like, he has yet to have like a good game this year. He's had decent games. I'll say that. Bryce Young has had decent games this year, but they've never won a game you could be like, you know what? That was Bryce Young right there. Bryce Young, you're the reason why the Carolina Panthers won. And so I want to see that this year. I want to see it in this game. I don't think we're going to see it because, again, the Bills' weakness is their run defense. And so I think the Panthers are going to very heavily rely on that. But I want to see it. I need to see it to believe it, because at a certain point you have to look at this team and say to yourself, Is Bryce Young the future of this team, or is he just a placeholder? I have many friends that are Panthers fans, and what they tell me is Bryce Young will be around for 2 more years because of his contract. I don't understand why they're going to give him that long, other than the fact that they gave up like essentially their firstborn child for him. But at the same time, like, you got to figure out if he's the guy. And you're 4-3 right now. It shows how your team can actually excel and be successful. And again, a lot of times it's despite Bryce Young. So when it comes to actually what I think is going to happen this game, if you wanted to score from me from this one, I think the Bills will win this game. I think they would win this game 24-20. I think it would actually be a close game, again, because of the fact that they struggle against the run, and I expect the Panthers to very heavily run against this Bills team. So that's really where I expect this game to go. Again, when you get in here, make sure you make sure you comment. Tell me which game you think is going to be the best matchup this week. Which team is in a must-win situation already? We're heading into week 8. We're already going to start talking about that. That's going to be happening. All right. Let's dive into the Chicago Bears heading to Baltimore to play the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I was actually talking about this and coming up with sort of what I wanted to talk about for this game, and it's actually kind of changed a little bit. First things first, biggest news about this game is the fact that Lamar Jackson actually returned to practice today. That is the best news that this Baltimore team could actually get, and it has been the best news they've gotten all year. Truly, like, this team is 1-5. They're 1-3 at home. The only team they've beaten this year is the Cleveland Browns. And again, this Bears team, they're not a joke. They're 4-2. They're on a 4-game win streak. This team has confidence. Their system has some cohesion, where the Baltimore Ravens team, they look like a dumpster fire. Especially with Cooper Rush at quarterback. Like, Lamar Jackson being back is such a huge factor for this team and for this game, right? I'll say that right off the bat. But I still have so many concerns about this Ravens team. Like, that's the other aspect of this, is their defense is not good. Their defense is one of the worst in the NFL when it comes to the pass and the run. Like, on both in both facets of their defense, they are not having a good year. And so the Bears, they actually have like a legitimate offense in a sense. It's not, I wouldn't say like a high-powered offense, but Caleb Williams is able to sling the ball to receivers like Rome Odunze, like DJ Moore. You know, I would say DeAndre Swift actually had a decent game last week. I think he was a huge reason why they won last week. And so I don't think this is going to be like the type of game most people expected. I actually think this is going to be a back and forth game, because the Ravens are going to have to keep up with the Bears scoring. I didn't think I'd be explaining it that way, but that's definitely the case. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have to play tit for tat with Caleb Williams, because, again, I just don't trust the Ravens defense right now. They have way too many injuries. I know Roquan Smith has come back, but Roquan Smith, the only game he was really impactful in was against the Cleveland Browns. And again, other than that, that's their one win. I know he's been out a couple games, so I'm not going to put the last couple games on him. But again, you don't have Nnamdi Madubuike. You traded away Odafe Owe. So your pass rush is essentially nothing. The sack leader for the Baltimore Ravens, at this point, I believe, is still Nnamdi Madubuike. Let me just confirm this real fast. I'm almost 100% positive it's the case. And it's not even like a good number. Yeah. So Tavius Robinson is tied right now with Nnamdi Madubuike. But Nnamdi Madubuike hasn't played in the last 3 games. And he is leading this team in sacks with 2 sacks. Like, that's how bad this Ravens defense is. Like, they cannot get to the quarterback to save their life. It's that bad. And so, again, you're going to need some sort of energy. You're going to need someone like, you know, a Mike Green to step it up. Mike Green, their second-round pick, who, to me, has what it takes, right? He has the speed, he has the quickness, he has the bend, he has the strength. He just hasn't been able to put it all together in a game yet. And so, again, you're going to need to see him be impactful in this game. Same thing with Kyle Van Noy. Kyle Van Noy has been struggling with a hamstring injury off and on. He's getting older. You're going to need him to have an impact in this game, because if you get Caleb Williams off kilter, if he starts to feel that pressure, you know, I think that's when you're actually going to see, you know, the Chicago Bears offense struggle a little bit. Now, when it comes to predicting this game, I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think it's going to be high scoring because, again, I don't trust either of these defenses. I think the Ravens might win this game just purely from energy and the juice of getting Lamar Jackson back, and that's literally the only reason. I think the Ravens win this game 28-27. That's I think it's going to be that close of a game. I think it's going to come down to the wire, and I think the Ravens will win 28-27. Next game we're going to talk about. This is the last of the 1 o'clock games that we're going to get into. So the 49ers are traveling to Houston to play the Houston Texans. Now, in this game, a couple of interesting aspects. One, the Houston Texans are just not a good team this year. They're 2-4. I didn't expect that. I thought they were going to be much more. I thought they were going to be the top team in the AFC South, which is clearly the Indianapolis Colts, right? The Indianapolis Colts, they're leaps and bounds ahead of essentially everyone right now. But again, it's I really do think the 49ers are going to win this game, and I think they're going to win this game handily. I think I told you this last week, and I even posted a video about it. I am done projecting that the 49ers will lose a game because of injuries. Like they have so many serious injuries, so many key players out, and yet they continuously win these games. They have the opposite of what the Baltimore Ravens have, and it's culture, it's cohesion, and it's like camaraderie, because that's why they're winning these games. Oh yeah, they also have Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is the biggest reason why the 49ers keep winning. He was out a lot of last year. That is why the 49ers struggled. And I think him being still available and being a key part of this team is a huge reason why this 49ers team is still 5-2 and one of the top teams in the NFC and in the NFL in general. And so I expect CMC to have his typical 150 yards from scrimmage sort of game, probably a couple touchdowns, maybe 2 on the ground or maybe 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. But again, I think that the 49ers win this game. I think they win this game pretty handily. I see them forcing turnovers from CJ Stroud. I expect the 49ers will win this game. I think it'll be somewhere around 24-17. We got a 4 o'clock game coming up next, and this is actually a division rivalry game. And it was funny, I was actually listening to Baker Mayfield talk about it. Baker Mayfield apparently not a huge fan of the New Orleans Saints organization. He finds them to be pretty dirty, which I think they've had that reputation in the past, especially with Sean Payton at the helm. Hasn't necessarily been something that's been brought up recently. But you're talking about a 5-2 team going up against a 1-6 team. The Buccaneers coming off of a tough loss where Baker Mayfield just struggled to connect with his weapons. That was the biggest thing going up against the Lions. Like, they were open. He just was a lot of times was overthrowing. It was the same problem, and he just wasn't able to adjust. He was overthrowing his receivers. Mike Evans being out does concern me a little bit for this Bucs team, but I love Emeka Egbuka, and I think Tez Johnson is also a great pickup. I actually wanted the Ravens to draft Tez Johnson. I thought he was going to be a great addition. I was kind of surprised he fell as far as he did in the draft. I'm not sure if it had to do with size or what, but I think Tez Johnson, he's a great story first off, but also a really good person. So I'm a fan of him. When it comes to actually what I see from this game, I think this is, one of the situations, like, this is the perfect game for the Bucs to be able to bounce back. I think the Saints to an extent, like, they don't give up. Spencer Rattler really struggled. This was the most Spencer Rattler struggled was in last week's game. I think he had something like 3 interceptions in last week's game. Let me just pull this up real fast just to make sure I'm right in saying they lost to the Bears. Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on 20 of 32 passing for 233 yards. So again, can he bounce back? Can he right the ship is going to be a big question mark for the Saints and for Spencer Rattler in this game. And again, I just think this is a game where, the Bucs are hungry and they're competing for a bye, let alone a playoff spot. Like, they're competing with the tops in the NFC right now. I think the Bucs win this game. I think they win this game easily. I see the Bucs winning this game 28 to 17. Sorry, that's what I had. Yeah, 28-17 is where I see this game going. I think Baker Mayfield gets back on track. and you see them really just handle the Saints pretty easily in this game. Next game we're going to talk about. This is an interesting one. I'm talking about the Dallas Cowboys are heading to Denver to face the Broncos. I'm actually really excited to see this. You're talking about a high-powered offense, right? The Dallas Cowboys offense right now is looking like one of the best in the league. It might actually be the best in the league. You know, they have a solid run game, and then CeeDee Lamb coming back with George Pickens, you know, seeing that duo with Dak Prescott is something to watch. Like Dak Prescott, he's got over 1,800 yards. He's got 16 touchdowns and 3 interceptions so far this year. Like those are insane numbers. Like I talked about the run game, 592 yards for Javonte Williams, who also has 6 touchdowns. Like this is a high-powered offense. The challenge for the Cowboys, who are 3-3, right? I just told you those numbers. You would never expect them to be 3-3. Their defense is abysmal. Their defense, again, one of the worst in the NFL. They give up so many points. They've had like 3 games where it's just gone back and forth, down to the wire because their defense gives up so many touchdowns. And Dak Prescott has either saved the game or come close to it at the end of games. But again, this is the type of game where I think the Broncos are going to rely very heavily on the run game, especially in this game. I think this will be a game where you see J.K. Dobbins getting another 100-plus yard game this week. I also expect Courtland Sutton to have one of the best games of his season so far. I think he just matches up really well against the cornerbacks of the Dallas Cowboys. Now on the other side, I do expect a high-powered pass game. Like the Broncos have Patrick Surtain. You only have one of Patrick Surtain, and they have 2 stud receivers in Dallas. And so I think this is going to be a game where the Broncos are going to control possession because they're going to be running the ball down the field, and the Cowboys are going to score really quickly after them. I think that's what this style of game is going to look like. If Bo Nix doesn't have the type of game he had against the Giants, I think the Cowboys might actually have a legitimate shot. But I think I'm still actually going to take the Broncos in this game. I think the Broncos are one of the best teams in the NFL. They're 5-2. I see them winning this game 28-24. I think it'll be a close one, but I actually think Bo Nix will take this one away, and the Broncos will continue to lead the AFC West, and the Cowboys will struggle a little bit from that perspective. We got 2 more games to talk about. Again, before I go through these games, if there's any topics you want me to talk about, please make sure to put those in chat. Any takes that you might have, whatever that might look like, we'll dive into those. But again, I'm going to be talking about the Titans versus the Colts, and then we have Aaron Rodgers going to Green Bay you have the Green Bay Packers going to Pittsburgh to face Aaron Rodgers. So you're going to see him going up against his former team. I know it's one team removed, but I'm sure that'll still be the story. But again, make sure you like, make sure you comment, also subscribe to this channel. Again, I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. We've got a lot of really good growth the last couple weeks. I want to keep that going, keep that momentum going. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. But let's dive into the Titans versus the Colts game. Obviously, I don't think we need to talk about this game too much for a couple of reasons. One, Titans being 1-6, new head coach. Cam Ward does not look like a number 1 pick. I've been saying that all year. I thought he actually might have a shot. He surprised me with the beginning of the game against the Patriots last week. He actually looked like he was on point, and then it just became all Patriots after that first quarter. And so for me, the Colts, they're just a well-oiled machine right now. They're excelling in all aspects of the game. Jonathan Taylor, 697 yards on the ground, 10 touchdowns. Daniel Jones, over 1,700 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Like, they are just a well-oiled machine. Their defense is one of the tops in the NFL as well. They just don't make mistakes. They're extremely consistent. And that's the exact opposite of what the Tennessee Titans are. The Tennessee Titans are extremely inconsistent, and honestly, if they are consistent at all, it's consistently bad. That's really what it comes down to. Is like if there's any sort of consistency with this team, they're consistently bad. And so I think that the Colts are going to run away with this game. I think they're going to run away with this game very easily. I think the Colts would probably win this game like 30-14. I think it's going to be an absolute blowout. Titans fans, I'm really sorry. You might be looking for not only just a new coach, you're going to be looking for potentially maybe even for another quarterback after this year, because Cam Ward, you're going to be struggling after the type of season you're going to be having. Your confidence is going to be shot. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with that. Last game I'm going to talk about before I sign off tonight, I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, Aaron Rodgers going up against Jordan Love. You kind of have to wonder, does Aaron Rodgers, does he put much weight on that in this game? Like, does he actually truly care about that anymore? For me, I think he is sort of a petty guy. I actually think Aaron Rodgers is very petty. And I'm not saying that in like a bad way necessarily. It can be bad, right? Being petty sometimes is entertaining in my opinion. But I do think this is a game where Aaron Rodgers is going to want to prove, hey guys, I still got it and you made a mistake. I don't think the Packers made a mistake. Jordan Love is looking pretty solid out there. He's close to 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He doesn't have like the best weapons. Like that's the one thing about this Packers team that I think is interesting is, you look at their, Matthew Golden, the number 1 receiver they took in the draft. You talk about Romeo Doubs. Jalen Reed is out right now. Maybe he's going to be coming back soon. I'm not 100% sure when, but in a couple weeks. He doesn't have a lot of weapons. Like Tucker Kraft had like an anomaly game a couple weeks ago. But really, Jordan Love is not working with a lot. And so he's been able to actually make a lot out of that is what I'm trying to get to. He's actually performed, I think, at a higher level than I actually expected him to perform at. I think Josh Jacobs is also a really solid running back for them. I think it's going to be really hard for the Steelers defense to really match up against the Packers offense. I think the Packers offense have a pretty solid offensive line where the Steelers' strength is, in my opinion, is in their defensive line and their pass rush. I think they have a pretty solid secondary, but again, their biggest strength is the fact that it's like a pick your poison situation. Like you can't just key on one guy on the Packers receiving room and say like we're going to stop him because we're stopping Romeo Doubs. Like that's not the answer. And so I think this is a game where the Steelers do need to get back on track. That loss to the Bengals, like that threw them through the ringer in my opinion. I don't think they expected that. I think it impacted this team from a confidence perspective, and I think it impacted them from like a culture perspective. You saw how Aaron Rodgers reacted when he got tackled to the ground by his own tackle, and after the game, you saw the fact that Aaron Rodgers was like, "What do you want me to do? Like I had a great game, and our defense did not. Like their defense really struggled against the Bengals. Again, that is obviously Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but I think they actually created a template for other teams on how to beat the Steelers defense. It's short passes, it's quick slant routes, it's out routes, it's screen passes. All of those things are how you beat the Steelers defense, because the one I would say weakness this defense has is it's not super quick. It's strong, it has speed, but it's not super quick. And so if you make these quick passes, make these quick plays, and just keep the Steelers defense on their toes, I think the Packers have a very legitimate shot to win this game. Again, I also am not sold on this Steelers offense. I think the Packers defense, I think Micah Parsons is going to make Aaron Rodgers' day a living hell. The Steelers tackles have really picked it up the last couple games, right? You've actually seen an increase in protection for Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if that's going to be the case in this game. I think the Packers will win this game in Pittsburgh, and you actually are going to see a true battle between the Steelers and the Bengals for the AFC North, because the Packers also need to win this game to stay atop the NFC North. The NFC North is a bloodbath in between them and the Lions especially, and then you also have, again, the Bears that are creeping up on them. So I think the Packers win this game. I think it's going to be somewhat low scoring, but also a close game. I think this game will be 24-20. The Packers win it. So those are all the games I wanted to go through. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I don't have any other games I wanted to get through. If anyone has any comments they want to make before I sign off, feel free to make those. Otherwise, I'll be signing off for today. thank you again for watching. This is your host, Bad Takes, with Bad Takes in Football, signing out.